Once again, Mark Carney is at the World Economic Forum in Davos giving a speech, which some people are calling the best speech from a world leader in a really long time. Of course, Donald Trump is also there this year, and he sends a warning to Canada and Carney. Plus, Chrystia Freeland gets confronted by Rebel News about the illegal use of the Emergencies Act while she was Deputy Prime Minister. It's been a news-packed 24 hours. Thanks for tuning in, and let's get into it. Mark Carney's speech. I'll play about 2 minutes of it. In the speech, he is implying that the whole world is living this lie that if countries go along to get along, presumably with the United States, he's implying United States here, that there will be safety. If countries just do what the United States wants, if countries cooperate, that safety will ensue. And he's implying that that's not the case. He's saying that this is some huge delusion. And he's comparing it to a communist scenario where a shopkeeper places a sign in his storefront that says, "Workers unite," and he doesn't really believe it, implying that that's the lie, and that the comparative lie is that countries who cooperate with the United States will not receive the safety that they're promised. Let's watch.
It seems that every day we're reminded that we live in an era of great power rivalry, that the rules-based order is fading, that the strong can do what they can and the weak must suffer what they must. And this aphorism of Thucydides is presented as inevitable, as the natural logic of international relations reasserting itself. And faced with this logic, there is a strong tendency for countries to go along to get along, to accommodate, to avoid trouble, to hope that compliance will buy safety. Well, it won't. So what are our options? In 1978, the Czech dissident Václav Havel, later president, wrote an essay called The Power of the Powerless. And in it, he asked a simple question: how did the communist system sustain itself? And his answer began with a greengrocer. Every morning, this shopkeeper places a sign in his window: "Workers of the world unite." He doesn't believe it. No one does. But he places the sign anyway to avoid trouble, to signal compliance, to get along. And because every shopkeeper on every street does the same, the system persists. Not through violence alone, but through the participation of ordinary people in rituals they privately know to be false. Havel called this living within a lie. The system's power comes not from its truth, but from everyone's willingness to perform as if it were true. And its fragility comes from the same source. When even one person stops performing, when the greengrocer removes his sign, the illusion begins to crack. Friends, it is time for companies and countries to take their signs down.
A lot of big fancy $10 words there, Mark. I know that he doesn't say in this portion that he's talking about the United States, but he does eventually mention it. I'll actually play that next 2 minutes of that clip as well.
For decades, countries like Canada prospered under what we called the rules-based international order. We joined its institutions, we praised its principles, we benefited from its predictability. And because of that, we could pursue values-based foreign policies under its protection. We knew the story of the international rules-based order was partially false, that the strongest would exempt themselves when convenient, that trade rules were enforced asymmetrically. And we knew that international law applied with varying rigor depending on the identity of the accused or the victim. This fiction was useful, and American hegemony in particular helped provide public goods, open sea lanes, a stable financial system, collective security, and support for frameworks for resolving disputes. So we placed the sign in the window. We participated in the rituals, and we largely avoided calling out the gaps between rhetoric and reality. This bargain no longer works.
Carney is saying the United States is a big, mean bully, disrespecting the rule of law, and he wants corporations and countries to take down the sign from their window and to stop believing the lie that the United States is a force for good in the world. And in this next bit that I'm going to play, he basically, I think, is admitting that he couldn't make a deal with the United States like he promised. He was going to negotiate us a win. So he went off skulking and seeking other new best friends like China and Qatar.
Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. Over the past 2 decades, a series of crises in finance, health, energy, and geopolitics have laid bare the risks of extreme global integration. But more recently, great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons, tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. You cannot live within the lie of mutual benefit through integration when integration becomes the source of your subordination. The multilateral institutions on which the middle powers have relied, the WTO, the UN, the COP, the architecture, the very architecture of collective problem solving are under threat. And as a result, many countries are drawing the same conclusions, that they must develop greater strategic autonomy in energy, food, critical minerals, in finance and supply chains. And this impulse is understandable. A country that can't feed itself, fuel itself, or defend itself has few options. When the rules no longer protect you, you must protect yourself. But let's be clear-eyed about where this leads. A world of fortresses will be poorer, more fragile, and less sustainable. And there's another truth. If great powers abandon even the pretense of rules and values for the unhindered pursuit of their power and interests, the gains from transactionalism will become harder to replicate. Hegemons cannot continually monetize their relationships. Allies will diversify to hedge against uncertainty. They'll buy insurance, increase options in order to rebuild sovereignty.
I especially love this line where he's like, great powers have begun using economic integrations as weapons, tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. And yes, he's implying that the United States is doing this, but I think this is a more accurate description of China than the United States. But thanks to Mark Carney, I guess communist China and the CCP are our best friends now. And the United States, our neighbor, our biggest trading partner, is now seen as an enemy. Now let's get to the fun part. Donald Trump was at Davos as well, and he had a few words to say to China-loving Carney.
Building the Golden Dome, that's going to, just by its very nature, going to be defending Canada. Canada gets a lot of freebies from us, by the way. They should be grateful also, but they're not. I watched your prime minister yesterday. He wasn't so grateful. They should be grateful to us. Canada lives because of the United States. Remember that, Mark, the next time you make your statements.
Remember that, Mark, the next time you make your statements. I really don't understand why people view the United States in such a negative light. I certainly can't ever look at China and say, hey, that's a great country. Forget about their human rights violations, their non-existent free speech, their persecution of the Uyghurs and Christians, and forget about the fact that people can't protest the government peacefully over there. China is good now, and you should love China because Mark Carney said you should love China. You should view the United States with animosity and suspicion. I can't get there. Not going to be me. Is the United States perfect? Obviously not. No country in this fallen world will ever be perfect. But is the United States a free country? Is it more free than Canada? I think so. They have the First Amendment right and the Second Amendment right. And do we have that in Canada? No, we do not. We do not have the same free speech laws that the United States does. And I know people will say, well, if you love the United States so much, you should just move there. And to them, I say, no, I don't want to move there. I want Canada to have the same freedoms that they do. And I want people to understand that more freedoms is better than less freedoms, and that Canada is not as free as the United States, but we should be. We should have the same thirst and hunger as our neighbors to the south for all things freedom. I'm not sure why it upsets people so much when I say these things. Let's move on to this really satisfying clip of Chrystia Freeland being confronted by Rebel News about her illegal use of the Emergencies Act during the lockdowns, during the Freedom Convoy. Ezra Levant catches up with her on the streets of Davos and peppers her with questions that are quite pertinent, from which, of course, she tries to run away. And at the end, like a typical lefty, when confronted with questions she does not want to answer, she says, "You're harassing me."
Why did you freeze bank accounts of Canadians?
Well, that's a good question that I don't think you've ever answered. The Federal Court of Appeal recently ruled 3-0 that your decision was unconstitutional. Do you regret that? You seized and froze bank accounts. The Federal Court of Appeal said that was unconstitutional. Any regrets? No regrets. Do you have an apology for the people whose bank accounts you illegally seized? You still happy about it?
I'm proud of standing up for Canadians.
Are you proud of breaking the law? That's the charter you broke, ma'am. That's not just any old law. 4 judges in a row have agreed you broke the law. You're a lawbreaker. That's weird.
I've answered your questions.
You should be really proud. You should be really proud of
and
yourself.
I think you should be ashamed of yourself.
For what?
For doing Putin's work.
You froze
for
Canadians'
harassing.
bank accounts.
Your legacy is someone who turned our banking system into a third world system, a banana republic. You're fine with what you did. You don't regret it.
As I said, I've spoken to you and we're finished this.
But you haven't answered the fact that 4 judges say you broke the law. You don't think you need any public statement on that?
I've spoken at length about the issues that I need to
Not
speak
since the
about.
Court of Appeal ruled. The Court of Appeal said you're a lawbreaker. You haven't said anything since then.
That this constitutes harassment by people who are doing Putin's job for him.
You're a censor, aren't you? You would love to take my bank account, wouldn't you?
Extremely embarrassed and ashamed of
I'm
themselves.
not embarrassed at all. I didn't break the law like you did.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
I'm neither ashamed nor embarrassed because I'm not a lawbreaker like you.
"You're harassing me," Freeland says. I guess whether you're a former deputy prime minister who's now some sort of economic advisor to Ukraine as well, or you're a lonely, loony protester at a Pierre Poilievre rally, if someone asks you questions that you know you can't answer, the standard response for these liberals is, "You're harassing me. This is harassment. I'm going to call the police on you and I'm going to get you arrested if I can," which is what Freeland did many times. Freeland and the Libs, they've arrested Rebel News reporters multiple times. I should also point out that the beginning of that video put out by Rebel News, Ezra presses her on her new position with Ukraine. If you want to watch that clip in full, I highly recommend you check it out. It's on their X page and on their YouTube page, and I'll just link it in the description because you have to watch the whole thing. It's really good. Well, thanks for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to support the channel, please consider smashing the like button, subscribing to the channel, and leaving your thoughts in the comments below. Did you think Mark Carney's speech was the greatest ever from a world leader in a really long time? Or was it just a bunch of his liberal, fancy word garbage? If you don't already, follow me on X. My handle is @catcanada_TM. And if you want to support, consider becoming a YouTube member or subscribing to me on X. You'll get priority interactions and comments and DMs on X, and you'll get bonus content here on YouTube. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you next time.